welcome to Nerd Society, and this is the review for The Walking Dead season finale of season 6. Is it safe to come out now? So, if you're someone who's read the comics, you're probably sitting there next to someone who hasn't read the comics, which is basically the part where I want to pick up this video straight away, because that's the part I want to talk about. I will quickly talk about everything else in the episode. Carl obviously is on a bit of a warpath right now. Abraham has finally accepted that he's ready to take on another challenge, which is potentially a child with Sasha. Maggie is in a bad way. Daryl, that last cliffhanger that we had, we're not going to find out until the end. Carol's lost her fucking marbles. And Trevor from GTA 5 is alive and well in the Walking Dead universe. Okay, so overall the episode had the normal pacing of any other Walking Dead episode. Can be a bit slow at times, but generally keeps you on the edge of the seat as you're watching it. As I said before, someone who's read the comics, hearing that whistle coming through the woods, just that whole build-up to Negan was actually was a fun build-up. The reveal of Negan, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, absolutely nailing it again. I mean, I think anything he does, he picks the right characters for who he is as an actor. Hats off to you, bud. So before I go forward with any sort of spoilers, I'm not going to do them just yet. We're just going to talk about the final scene. Much like the comics, Negan has them all lined up. And if you've watched season 6, which obviously you all have, you'll have noticed all the way through the season, which is something I noticed, is Rick and gang were getting almost too good. They were getting away with too much. They were being too awesome. Not enough was really giving them much of a challenge. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, so the big question is, who just took Lucille to the face? Spoiler alert, if we're going to go by the comic books, seriously, spoiler alert, this is where Glenn meets his fate. He takes Lucille to the face multiple times, pretty much in the same action. It's pretty nasty in the comics. The skull fractures, his eyes pretty much hanging out. It's all round brutal. Not good. If we're going not with Glenn, my next opinion on the matter is definitely Abraham, purely because of how much we've been building up on Abraham. I've really began to like him as a character, and I feel a lot of people across the board like him. He's a non-bullshitter kind of guy, and he's always been there to save people. He's definitely done his worth to help. And they built him up, and the way they built him up with the whole ready to accept new life, have a child, you're sort of happy for him, you're sort of really on level with his emotions. So I think to take that away from us when we've got to know this character so well, I think that's going to real punches in the feels. However, I do want to say a couple of things. My personal opinions, it wasn't Carl that Negan took out, because if you remember what Negan said, he said if anyone makes a move, take out that kid's other eye, meaning Carl's, and feeding it to Rick. Definitely nasty. What really irritated me about the episode at the end was the cliffhanger. A lot of TV shows are doing that nowadays, and I think they're taking advantage of it just to try and get you to come back to watch next week's episode. If you're invested in a TV programme, you don't need a cliffhanger to come back. I understand some episodes are worthy of cliffhangers. A perfect example of how to do a cliffhanger would be an episode in Daredevil Season 2. There's a big revelation in it, and when they get to the next episode, they get straight back into it. That's why we come back. That's why you're asking us to come back. So when we do come back, make sure that's what we're fucking coming back for, and not an episode that's going to start at the end of the episode and then eventually work up to it. A perfect example of that is Daryl. Like at the end of the last episode, that was another shitty cliffhanger to leave us on as well. I understand why they're doing it, but you don't need to call us back for views. We're already here. We're already invested in your show. So you don't need to pull moves like that. I'm not saying it wasn't a bad clip the way they did it at the end, but an extra 60 seconds wouldn't have gone amiss. I would much rather the episode ended where maybe it did fade to black and then we saw an overshot of everyone surrounded and one body lying on the floor, left it up to us to figure out, right, who was lying here, 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 and here. That's the body on the floor. Then we've got something to talk about. Not just waiting and not being able to discuss nothing or anything because we don't know anymore, because we've just seen the reveal of Negan. I just feel that was just a cheap move. And the one thing that really irritates me in his programmes when they just end the programme out of